today to talk about how we, the children of Africa, the African diaspora, who have been out of the continent going back as far as 400 years ago. Our Africa, a continent that has been played like a football by non-Africans. Our Africa that finds herself exploited by everyone else except her children. We are gathered here today to say enough is enough. We're gathered here today to say Africa belongs to the children of Africa at home and abroad. We're gathered here today to remind ourselves of Kwame Nkrumah's speech in 1963 when he said, you are not African because you were born in Africa, but rather you are African because Africa is born in you. By you being here today, I am making an assumption that Africa is born in you.
Yes.
Because you see, being an African is a spirit. When you meet somebody who has Africa born in them, you will know that spirit. It is those who have Africa born in them that are being called upon to do something about what is going on in our Africa. You see, they say to whom much is given, much is expected. By virtue of us being here, much has been given to us. But more importantly, at this critical time in the history of our continent, for those who are not aware, for 700 years, Africa was colonized. It was settlers first, the Portuguese, for 300 years. For 400 more years, they were joined by later on other colonizers. The end result is we have an Africa that we do not have control over. Berlin Conference left us an Africa which was chopped up into the tiny little countries that we see today. Economies that clearly cannot survive on their own. I often use an example of how does Burundi go to the negotiating table with China? How does Central African Republic go to the negotiating table with the European Union? There is no parity there. There is no parity. And it was all by design to see to it that we have an Africa that is continuously chasing her own tail. An Africa that no matter how hard the individual small countries try, it's an Africa that just can't make it. But in the event that the countries are able to begin to make a headway, there are economies that are so small, they are easy to destabilize. And that has been the history of Africa. If you notice that whenever there has been instability in any country, pay attention, there's always a natural resource related to that region. Right. Whenever there has been a coup, it's because the president has decided to wake up and start to say enough is enough, you colonizers, you can't continue to do this anymore. They find their heads on the chopping block and they get killed. Our Africa has been under siege. I took my position 3 years ago as the ambassador. I came to Washington with a clean slate. I was telling a friend earlier today that I had one little suitcase because I knew I wasn't going to stay. I didn't know what I was going to do in Washington, D.C. But as I stayed a little bit longer, I began to see what I felt was just not right. I saw some of our brothers and sisters from the continent in various leadership roles coming to the United States. And slowly I began to realize that even when sometimes we should speak up, for whatever reason we don't speak up. And I also realized that we're just taken for granted. It's almost as if Africans just need to show up so you can say Africans were there, check. Whether African agenda was moved forward or not, it did not matter. But what's even worse was that we accepted that abnormal behavior as normal. If you look at our history as black people, we have normalized abnormal behavior. How do we remain the most disrespected race on earth, no matter where you find us. That is abnormal, and we must not normalize it. But that is our reality. We have normalized the abnormal. Well, the game is up. I don't know about you, but this is not the world I like to leave behind for my children, my grandchildren, and generations to come. And I also do know that what I want for my children, that's what millions of mothers out there want. What I want for my grandchildren, that's what millions of grandmothers out there want. The question then becomes, we happen to be inheritors of one of the most amazing continents on earth. The continent with everything and anything the world could ever need. We are the origin of humanity. If anything, we should be the ones to stand on top of the tallest mountain and proclaim to the world who we are. Because you see, without the black race, there would not be any other races. That's just a fact. Yes. Now, whether they want to hear it or not, but why then are we treated like we're the scum of the earth? And we have accepted it. Why then do we automatically feel inferior whenever the mind? To a very large extent, we're all still suffering from the legacy of slavery and the legacy of colonization. That is a diagnosis that we, each and every one of us, must make within ourselves. Are you colonized? Are you suffering from the legacy of slavery? The most dangerous thing for Africa today is a colonized mind. Because no matter where we put you, no matter what opportunities are put in front of you, as long as you're dealing with them with a colonized mind, we will lose. So the question is, as we come here today to talk about our Africa, what frame of mind are you in? Are you still in the frame of mind that says, I don't trust you, my brother? Are you still in the same frame of mind that says, you are continental African, you are different from me because I'm African American? Are you still of the same frame of mind that says, I have more money than you, and therefore I'm superior to you? You see, we live in this wonderful country of the United States. We're surrounded by examples of what can be. I often say, ask for the voices of the Chinese diaspora, loud and clear. The Indians, the Mexicans, the Irish, the German Americans, Italian Americans, they are all very loud and clear.
That's right.
In this country, with the exception of the American Indians, everyone has their primary anchor outside the United States. And all other races, they celebrate their primary anchor, with the exception of us black people.
That is true.
We are too busy running away from our primary anchor. If you deny your primary anchor, then who are you? Where do you come from? You just were dropped from nowhere? It is the biggest stupidity that I've ever seen. And yet, too many of us are too busy denying Africa. But whether you like it or not, my brothers and sisters, you see, whether you were born in America or you're born in Africa, if two men are passing by right here, people are going to say, who passed by here? They're going to say two black men. They're not going to say an African American. They're not going to say a Ghanaian. They say two black men, whether you like it or not. You are an African, so wake up.
That's right.
And accept that the time to remain stuck on stupid is over. The reality is, our African leaders have approved what we are now calling the African Continental Free Trade Area. What that means is something that we have been trying to do for centuries. Going back to 56 years ago, when our Pan-African leaders met in 1963, they were trying to come together and undo the boundaries imposed upon us by the Berlin Conference. But sadly, when they went to Addis Ababa in 1963, they were divided thanks to the NATO allies who played games with the group that were the nationalists, the Monrovia group. The Casablanca group were Ghana, Guinea, Mali. Egypt, Morocco, Algeria, and Tunisia. They said Africa for the Africans at home and abroad, and African Union now. But because they were fewer, they lost. The nationalist says, oh, let's go slow. Let's not hurry into this one African thing. So they came with the compromise, which they called the OAU. Every year, the heads of states would meet twice a year. The issue of an Africa speaking with one voice was raised, and year in and year out, they failed to reach a consensus until March of 2018. Finally, they were able to reach a consensus. They agreed on a decision they are calling the African Continental Free Trade Area. July this year, the African heads of states officially launched the African Continental Free Trade Area. July next year, African Continental Free Trade Area is going to begin its implementation. Africa is going to enter the world market as one customs union. Currently, we're 5. Regional customs union. The boundaries that were imposed upon us are now getting ready to be melted.
Yes, thank you. Yes.
So as you clap, I want you to think about why you're clapping. This is what's getting ready to happen, my brothers and sisters. And this is the real reason why we are here today. And I hope you can all pay attention to what I'm getting ready to share with you. Because if I do not share this with you, it would be criminal behavior on my part. July next year, we are going to see an Africa with a combined GDP of $3 trillion, with a workforce of 1.27 billion people, and a marketplace that you can build such a business in one country and spread like wildfire throughout the continent. The borders that have kept us from coming together are getting ready to melt. Guess who is just waiting for this day to come? You see, the two things that are keeping Africa from getting to her rightful place on the world stage is finances and capacity. No amount of money put into Africa without the capacity will deliver the desired results. I often use healthcare. If all African American doctors and continental African doctors were to go home today, we're only going to meet about 30% of the need. So no amount of money alone will deliver a sustainable Africa that we want. The only missing ingredient is you and I. It is you and I. So if we don't come together and unite and also get ourselves ready for July next year, guess what? The Chinese are waiting. They got their capacity and they got their funding. The Europeans are waiting. They got their capacity and they got their funding. The children of Africa, the inheritors of this amazing continent, we're still sleeping like grasshoppers. We are still sleeping like grasshoppers. Now we're sleeping because to a great extent we do not know. The contracts that are getting ready to be rolled out, these are contracts that were never made available to black people. The reality is the Cape to Cairo highway is going to be built. The question is, by who? Massive commercial farms are going to be started. The question is, by who? The African Continental Airlines, they are going to be launched. The question is, by who? 90% of the intra-Africa trade is done by maritime. Not a single vessel is owned by a black person. We are getting ready to quadruple intra-Africa trade in the next 5 years. Guess where all that money is going? The question is, where are the children of Africa? Are we still going to continue to say, I don't trust you, therefore I can't give you my $1,000? I don't trust you because I just can't support anything you're doing. But the reality is, whoever had somebody says, oh, Ambassador, these African leaders, they just want us to bring our money. Well, you know what? I remember President Trump, 2017, he was speaking to the African heads of states. He said, I don't know why you people are poor. My friends go to Africa poor, they come back rich. Do you have a problem doing the same thing? The heads of states are saying, you can invest your money in Africa, come back to America, go back to Europe, and play golf just like they do. Do you have a problem with that? They're not gonna beg you. Africa is gonna be built, and there will be millionaires and billionaires and trillionaires made out of others from your Africa. And you're too busy trying to play that divide and conquer rule. I'm here to share with you, my brothers and sisters, that we are at a do or die time in the history of our continent. No more shall we continue to distrust each other. This is a time, if there was ever any time that we must come together to defend our Africa, this is it. Yes. And I am going to run around this country like a chicken without a head until every black person that must hear has heard. You see, when you don't do the right thing because you don't know, I forgive you. But when you don't do the right thing after you have been given all the information, then you deserve what you get. We have been stuck on stupid for far too long. We need to wake up. 1 million people with $1,000, that's $1 billion. Can we not do that, my brothers and sisters?
We can.
Now make it 2 million people with $2,000. Make it 5 million people with $1,000. And then we do it year in and year out. You see how painless it can be?
Absolutely.
For us to build the Africa that we want?
Absolutely.
And that is why I'm here today. To say we need to come together and speak with one voice. And this time let the world know that the children of Africa are coming home.
Amen.
Because you
Amen.
do not go to China and find you guys driving the Chinese development agenda. You don't go to Mexico, you don't go to Europe, you don't go to India and find black people driving the developmental agenda for those countries.
True.
You therefore must not, should not, shall not, and by God will not go to Africa and find non-Africans driving the African continental agenda. Unless, of course, you all choose to vacate that place that has your name. That place that says, Africa is yours. Play your part. Refuse to be divided. Refuse to listen to the lies that they have told us over the years. It is through our unity, just like the other races have done. It's not by accident that the Jews are as powerful as they are. They believed in each other. We may not like each other as individuals, but when it comes to Africa, we must stick together like super glue. You see, we are suffering from a disease that I often say, we are not in the doctor's office waiting room. We are not even in the hospital regular ward. We are in the intensive care, my brothers and sisters. We are sick people, and we need healing. But for you to go to the doctor first, you must realize that you are sick. Most of us don't even realize that we're sick. Well, let me give you an example. If you didn't want to know how to diagnose yourself, are you sick and how sick are you? You tell me why. You all have heard the story of the white man's ice is colder. Two brothers are selling house. One happens to be white and the other one happens to be black. When we show up as black people, guess whose ice we are going to buy?
The white man.
The white man, because his is colder, even though they're getting the ice from the same gas station. I share a story. When I was in Jamaica once, looking quite officious with my friend who was a minister, we're driving a brand new sparking SUV. We just wanted to go through a resort and have a drink. We get to the gate and this young black Jamaican man sticks his head out. Do you have a VIP pass? And my friend says, I am the VIP pass. When the young man got really angry with us, he ushered us, he told us we cannot get inside, we gotta park outside. I went to walk half a mile to the resort. So I told my friend, I said, well, that's okay. We need the exercise. Behind us, my godson and his girlfriend, who happened to be a white lady from Canada, driving the most ragged looking car. You will see patches of what once upon a time was blue paint. It was, and the door, I still remember the door was yellow. He could not look any poorer. And as we were parking, and we were getting out of the car outside the resort, we turned around, and there was my godson in his raggedy old car making all kinds of noises, and they were going through the gate. I said, did they have a VIP pass? And my friend looked at me and he said, well, don't you see the VIP pass sitting next to him? That is our reality. How many of you have gone to Africa and you are in a restaurant? You got there before others, and here comes our fellow friend, our Caucasian brothers and sisters. And our own people would leave us to go wait on them. That's what I'm talking about. So when you find yourself thinking like that, stop. Remind yourself that that is my ICU illness. I must heal myself. It's a constant process of checking yourself until you get to a point that you say, it's about my brother and my sister first. Because others, that's what they do. That's what they do. We're the only ones who are busy trying to be nice. They're not. And I'm not saying anything they do not know. I'm simply saying, let's realize that if we are going to build the Africa that we want, the continental agenda for Africa must be driven by the children of Africa.
That's right.
And that is why we must unite. I'm here to share with you what we have put together to get us on that path that we can say, Africa, we're on our way.
That's right.
And we are going to be driving the African continental development agenda. The entity that we're registering is called African Diaspora Development Institute. It's going to be the go-to place for everything African. But more importantly, it's going to be our place that we can say, enough is enough, and we are going to be the generation that's going to turn the corner. The generation that's going to say, no more shall we be divided. The generation that's going to say Africa for the Africans at home and abroad. That we want to have our friends come with us, but they need to understand that when they come with us, they are behind us.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Just like when we go to China, we are behind them. When we go to Mexico, we are behind them. When we go to India, we are behind them. So it's only fair that when they go to Africa, they are behind us.
Right on.
Two main things. We're going to need a database. It's in the process of being developed. It's called Burmalink. It's like the LinkedIn of all black people around the world. We're hoping to have that launched sometime in January. We're also in the process of registering a fund in Mauritius, which is an African diaspora fund. It is this fund that we are saying, whatever money you have, starting with a minimum of $1,000, put it in there and let it go. It is the fund that then turns around and invests in the continental area. Wouldn't it be nice to fly in a plane that you are a shareholder of? There's nothing wrong with that, because there are many others who are doing that. Wouldn't it be nice to go and live and stay at a resort that you are a shareholder of? But guess what? It's no longer imaginary. It's right here. We can do it. Through the fund, as we put more and more money into the fund, that's more projects that are going to be invested in by the fund. 3 ways to enjoy your Africa. You can be a shareholder in the fund and never step foot in Africa if you don't want to. You can also be a shareholder who gets contracts to build the Africa that you want. Or you can be a professional who is a shareholder and also an employee for whatever service you choose to give. Our pilot program is going to be the Wakanda villages. You see, we are at a time there's never been a continental development agenda. It has always been an agenda for developing a country, but never the continent. Now we are at a time that there's a need for a continental agenda.
That's right.
Through the Institute, because we are the ingredient that Africa needs to build, not only to build the Africa that we want, but also introduce sustainability. See, the colonizers intentionally did not do anything that was sustainable because they wanted us to forever go and beg. Get me some. Get me some. So Wakanda villages, there's going to be one in each region. The real name is African Diaspora Centers of Excellence. The brain drain that has occurred out of Africa for over 400 years, we must reverse that. There are more Ghanaian doctors in New York City than in the entire country of Ghana. There are more Nigerian doctors in Los Angeles than in the entire country of Nigeria. So the reality is, we must reverse the brain drain. The educators that we need to beef up the capacity in Africa are right here. So through Wakanda, we're going to have a first-class hospital, teaching hospital. Starting there, we're going to start training all the healthcare capacity that the region needs. There's going to be a healthcare team that's going to strategize on how many doctors do we have, how many do we need, at what pace do we need to train and build hospitals in order to say 20 years from now, problems with access to healthcare are no more. We're going to have educational teams do the same thing. How many primary schools do we have? How many primary school teachers do we have? How many do we need? At what pace do we need to train? So for every university in Wakanda, there will be more universities in the region. For every hospital in Wakanda, there'll be more hospitals in the region. But this time, everything built with a strategy. Some hospitals will be specializing in under-venom snake bites. Some hospitals will specialize in infectious diseases. Some hospitals will specialize in cancer. But in a way that we are saying, of the people in that region, what do we need to take care of them? And we go on to set up a plan to address those issues, that in 20 years, Africa is the first world. We'll have infrastructure teams for roads and nothing but roads. And all they do is every day, they're strategizing, they're building roads for 20 years. We're going to have those in railway lines. They're going to be building railway lines. Until 20 years, we say, every railway line that we need, we have. Agriculture, we're only giving 5 years. It's insane that a continent like Africa has to import food. Unacceptable, and I'm embarrassed every time I say that. That has to stop. 5 years, no more. No country in Africa should be importing food, because we will have our agricultural people organizing regional wheat production areas, regional rice production, regional maize production, regional chicken farms. Let's take our brothers and sisters in textile. I like to look nice in our African clothes, but the reality is, when we wear our African fabrics, we are promoting China, because all these fabrics are coming from China. We must have our own textile mills. We must manufacture our own fabrics. There will be regional textile manufacturing, and we will grow for that. So these regional teams are going to be tasked with the responsibility of developing our Africa in a measurable way, with a 5-year plan, 10-year plan, 15-year plan. Gali, by 20, we should say mission accomplished. Can we not do that, my brothers and sisters?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
Is there anything that we need that cannot be found in the diaspora?
No.
Nope.
Absolutely not. And all we gotta do is unite. That's all we gotta do. And all we gotta do is remind ourselves that the shackles of the mind are alive and well in me, and that I am going to have a serious conversation with the image in the mirror, that I refuse to be in the intensive care anymore from this disease. We must heal. And until that healing takes place, the building of the Africa we want will always be a dream. I like to see 5 years from now, millionaires coming out of your diaspora, because you will have invested in your Africa. Because if you do not become the millionaires, guess what? Others will.
That's right.
The choice is yours. Others will. Plain and simple. And if you're already a millionaire, we want you to be a billionaire. If you're already a billionaire, there's nothing wrong in becoming a trillionaire. Would you rather have others become all that out of your Africa?
Yeah, right.
You want to remain stupid? Go at it. But I want you to know, I am committed. I have told my husband, I said, give me 2 years. I am going to run around this country like a chicken without a head, and I'm going to tell my story. I'm going to let everybody know what is happening in our continent. And after I have done that, I will gladly lie in my grave, knowing I did what I could. And when I knew what I knew, I shared with my brothers and sisters. We So what we're doing today is soft launches, letting everybody know what's in the pipeline, that we're trying to get ourselves ready, that you should start looking at saving your money. Because sometime in February, first part of March, we're going to have the official launch. And when we do the official launch, you better be ready to jump in.
That's right.
You see, from what the money people are telling me, the first people to go in, their returns are going to be better because you're going to be in on everything the fund is going to invest in.
Yes.
Whatever time you join the fund, you also are part of whatever the fund does moving forward from when you enter. The money people know more about it. They will be there to tell you. There's going to be an investment team, which are part of ADDI, and they're the ones that are going to manage the fund. But for us, the investment projects are pretty straightforward. Everything is needed. And Wakanda is going to be where we all come together and build in a measurable way the Africa that we want. I hope I've explained to the best that I can what is going on at home in our Africa. That it is a new day. It is now time for us to get up and unite, and once again, say, enough is enough. Let me say one thing, one last thing to the men. And I'm sorry if I'm going to offend someone. But the reality is, when you look at what has been going on in Africa, I want to ask you men, why have you failed to protect us as your wives? Why have you failed to protect us as your children, as your sisters, as your aunts? You have sat and watched other men exploit Africa, and you have done nothing. Nothing. Anywhere else, what is being done to Africa is the reason for all out war. The black men just sit back and let it go. Well, I'm going to tell you one thing, my brothers. If you can't fix this, if you can't come together in a meaningful way to protect us and do what is right and protect our inheritance for our children, grandchildren, and generations to come, guess what?
The women will do
We'll
it.
take
Step
over.
aside.
All right.
We the women will.
We got it.
We the women will. 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 Because you know what? It's because enough is enough.
Enough is enough.
Enough is enough.
Yes.
Thank you.